CSVs, and they were really large. I mean, we're looking at, 3 gigs of data just from the files themselves. So it took a long time to actually load it into Power BI and then work with it. So I wanted to actually start, so I wanted to go over kind of that step where I did it in Power Query and then move on to the visualization and analysis side that I did on this report. One of the things I liked about this challenge too is it was very clear on the requirements. So, it specified there's some issues with the raw data and what they wanted to have changed to it. And then they had these 6 questions they wanted to answer for future fiscal weeks. So here, there's a lot of different, a lot of them are just filtering, not store and forward. Make sure we take out unknown zones. But then they had some bit more complicated ones where you have, if they're all negative, make them positive. If calculate the fare differently based off of a certain criteria. So anyway, so I'll go ahead and show you that step. So if we go to transfer data, now it took a long time to load this data. And my computer's pretty good. Uh-oh. No. Now it's all upset. Oh, no. Oh, well. I don't actually want to have it try and reload. Oh, I see. Let me just go and... I had moved this out of my... I changed this from my other profile to this profile. So then I forgot I don't have access to that folder on this profile. So this is, by the way, how you change those sources. Let me go ahead and just fix this. And
nice. And while you're doing this, Zoe, I just want to point out, I think that you're using a folder source there, it looks like too, right?
Exactly.
A neat data source for Power BI files can be, you don't have to point it to just one file, you can point it to a whole folder. So go ahead.
Exactly, and that was really one of the first things I was going to point out as well is why did that not update? There it goes, edit permissions. There it goes. One of the things that is really cool about that is it's not only just your local folder, it's really a good solution for if you have Excel file, even if it's one. Like this one has 4 files, so I want to combine the files using Power BI's built-in mechanism for combining files. They're all the same structure, so it works out really well. But another one it's really good for is if you have a file up on SharePoint and you want to connect to it, and you want to connect to multiple files maybe in the same folder, it's really good to do it as a folder and then bring them in that way. And it works out really well. And I just found out, I was just doing one yesterday, and it has, because if you're logged into SharePoint or Teams, wherever you're accessing that file, and if you have Power BI in the same credential, they'll kind of auto update on the hour without you having to actually hit a full refresh, which I thought was pretty cool. Okay, so I've hopefully got this to work here, but I really just want to go, there's a lot of steps over here. And a lot of them, so the first one is, as Brent said, I connected to the folder, and then all this stuff up here was auto-generated. I didn't write any of this. I just literally combined the 4 files into one file. And that's an invoke custom function. And then, so the source is just those 4 files. And here you can just click on binary and it opens up the file just like you pointed directly to it. And so then it goes through and it goes ahead and expands them and puts them all on top of each other. So it stacks it. So the really key point here is to make sure that they are all the same structure. You can even do this if you have, I just did one last week, well, week before rather, where it was actually a pivot table broken out in multiple tabs, in a single Excel file, and you can use this to actually combine multiple tabs inside of an Excel file into one table in Power BI. So that was another one we did. We probably should have just connected directly to the cube, but it was just easier. They had it already filtered, and we just wanted to get it out pretty quickly. So here we are. So now we start doing those steps. So a lot of them are very simple, where we're just filtering on a simple variable. And so you see a lot of filtering down here. But then we have ones that are a bit more complicated. Excuse me. And so here we can do, I actually wrote the if statement and then it converted it to this. So if that, and it goes down here, and you can add those custom ones. One I wanted to really show was this one, exclude criteria. So sometimes if it's more complicated, you have to check multiple columns. You have to check for multiple criteria. You can do that with just an if statement. So if the pickup date is less than drop off, then 1. Else if the trip distance equals 0 and fare is 0, then 1. So I want to exclude rows that hit either of those criteria. And so I'm marking them as 1, and then the next step I'll just filter them out.
That's actually something that I use quite a bit, Zoe, and I'd like to just point out here that we could add conditionals in here. So if we wanted to say if pickup date's less than drop off date and some other condition,
Yep.
you know, we could it's actually a really powerful way to create custom columns.
Exactly, and it keeps it kind of in that row level context. You're not doing one and then the other. It's all on the same time. So that was really, so I went through, did that, added some more, just based off those requirements given. So if these are all less than 0, then I made a multiplier to flip them, and I do a measure later. And then those custom recalculations that they're required. And then just regular changing type. One of the things that was really interesting about this is I actually stopped, and then I extracted out the time, and I extracted out dates. So one of the criteria you want to see here is you want to see it by date, but then you also want to see kind of time of day when the pickup occurred. When you pull out just the time piece, it becomes with the seconds. You don't need that. We can actually just calculate to the start of the hour. And so that's what I did here. And that's just, you can just go transform. You see, it's your transform, and you can say, oh my gosh, where is it? Time filters. All right, I know there's a way. It's built in. You can do it, and you can transform it to start of hour. I might have actually done it. I don't think I typed it in, so it must be in there somewhere. And so for this one, I just pushed it back to the start of the hour. So anything, even though it was really close to say 9, like this one's 8:59:49, I pushed that back into 8 a.m. So you can do it differently. You can round it. There is ways to do it, maybe bottom of hour, depending on your scenario. One of the things I did was, I think I should did it up here. I removed columns. Where's my... And the reason I did that is because when I actually first did this data set, it was still about 800 megs, the file. It was a very large file. I can show that here. So here it's 850 megs. It's very, very heavy. It's hard on your computer to work with. But I realized a lot of the columns in the data were actually not necessary for the analysis. Like the date times, after, pre-breaking them up, I wasn't going to use that anywhere. There was no way I was going to get down to the individual for 25 million trips in a taxi. And there was a lot of additional fields that just weren't used in the analysis. So I actually deleted them. And just deleting those, and that was like 10 columns, that reduced it to a quarter the size. And it became 200 megs, which is a lot easier to work with on the computer, and it's a lot easier to publish and a lot easier to refresh. So this one would never be refreshed. It's just a static data set, but in real world scenarios, a lot of times data will continue to come in. So having it start out really big is not a great scenario. If I ended up with a large data set and I couldn't reduce it, another way you can do is to reduce the impact on your local machine, is to actually publish it up and then close it down and then start a blank Power BI and just connect live to it and do the analysis on top of it that way. Now you can't go in and edit. You have to go edit the data model in a separate file, which is kind of annoying. But it will make a very small file to work with on the analysis side if you have the data set in a good kind of situation before you do the analysis. So that's what, like, if I've worked on models like 5 gigs in size, and that's one of the ways I've done that. Okay, so that was really quickly version of that. When I published this up, what I did, if you actually are curious, I have the full script here. You can copy it, paste it into your report with the files, and all you have to do is update that location, just like I did when I just started this call, and then you can actually see it and play around with it in your own Power BI file. And another comment here about kind of documentation. I took a screenshot of my model, and then I also provided all my DAX that I used in the report here as well. And this one's fairly easy. I have premium per user, so I can actually do this more programmatically, just using the Discover kind of measures. But this one I actually just did the Vertipack analyzer, and that one you can do on Pro as well. You just export the VPACs from DAX Studio, open it up in Vertipack analyzer, and then just copy it back into the model. And that's what I did here. All right, so I'm going to discard those changes. Actually, I'm going to kill that for a second because it'll take my data out. Okay, so one of the things for this report this challenge I also liked, so we got through all the data prepping, which was a big step. Usually they don't have any data prep really in these challenges. The data is pretty clean and good to go. But then they had these 6 questions. And so I kind of went through one by one, and kind of, what I like to do is I like to put in the question in the title, and sometimes I like to also answer it in the subtitle, like if it has Friday is our busiest day of the week, that kind of stuff. But at least this way, I find putting a question instead of saying, drop-off locations, busiest drop-off locations or something like that, but actually phrasing it as a question helps me when I'm building the report to make sure I'm answering that question. And also for those who are consuming the report to understand what I was actually building this visual for. I don't want them to have to kind of suss it out. I want it to be very, very clear. I want it to be obvious. I don't want it to be something they have to, it's not a puzzle. I want it to be fairly upfront when I do these reports. And so the whole point was to pick a fiscal week and then to kind of figure out in 2020 what do we think is going to happen based off the last 4 years data. Now this data is kind of interesting because we have such a volume decrease over the years. So it goes in 2017 all the way down to 2020, and you can see these numbers are just tanking each and every year. So it's very kind of difficult to kind of see those past trends. So one of the first things I noticed was that because 2017 is quite heavy, if I did straight averages of them by year for these weeks, then these numbers would be really kind of skewed towards 2017, 2018. It really wouldn't be an indication of, it wouldn't give any weight to the more current years, which may be more valid in kind of figuring out when our busiest days are. So here I went ahead and actually changed in 2 percentages for the days of the week and the timing per hour. In this way, so I said, instead of saying straight numbers, I said, 16% in this week were on Friday, and 16% were on Saturday in 2017. And then I went through each one and did the same exercise. And you can see that in 2017 and 2018, that like Saturday was actually a really big day. And when you get to 2019 and 2020, it's a lot different story. So that's what I also explain in this tooltip. And what's cool about this text box, especially in Power BI, is you can bring in those values. So here for this week, I can say, you know, I can explain there's a huge difference, so I'm normalizing into percentages and then averaging those, and then actually breaking down how I calculate it. And then if I click a different week, it will actually show those numbers instead. The other tricky part about this is 2020 is, of course, lockdown, New York City, so a lot of the number decrease year over year. It was definitely accelerated in 2020. So when I was trying to figure out a good way to give an average forecast range, like how many trips do you think we're going to have this week, I did two numbers and then provided a range instead. So the first one is including 20, so starting with 2020 number and then applying the week-over-week change from the four years to the 2020 number to provide the low end, which is about 5,000 trips. And then I also did a high end where we just kind of skip 2020 and we go look at 2019 and then kind of put that average week over week onto that number. So that will give us a very high range. So that will give kind of a ballpark estimate where whoever's, you know, the idea is to, you know, dispatcher, or they're trying to figure out how many taxis or how many people to hire and where they should go and what days they should work, right? So this will give them an idea. So they can get an idea then, okay, what's in this range right now, the lockdown is lifted. You know, we expect that it's probably going to be closer to 2019 than 2020 numbers. So they can kind of use that range to then make a decision on how much they should put into play. And again, I'm trying to explain this, how exactly I got those numbers. Transparency is really important. Communication is really important. And having that within the report. A lot of times, you know, maybe it's in an email, like, hey, I did this report for you. It has all these cool features. But that email will get lost in an inbox or in a wiki or in a team site. So I like having this stuff as close to where it's going to be used as possible. So you see I put it right here, right after I state it, has a little question mark here, and it will show that information down here. I also kept it, I left this one here because I am using the days of the week as an example, so they can kind of see it. The idea was originally that you could click on it and have it change as well. But then I made the close button this entire space. So you can't click on it. So that was a good plan, poorly executed. And then I also I've done this trick before, which is just tell me more, which kind of gives kind of an overview of each section. This one was pretty self-explanatory, so I actually had a little bit of trouble finding things to say. The other thing, so we have this little table down here.
Hey, Zoe, while you were there,
Yeah.
Is that your icon there? Is that your logo?
Yeah, so I get my logo through Taylor Brands, and they give me little seasonal versions. And so I always I think they're really cute. So I always try to use them if I can. And it may not have influenced the entire report style, you know, but you know.
That's awesome.
So I try to have a little fun, especially on these ones where I get a lot of latitude in color and style and design. You know, I don't always get that with clients, which is fair. They have their own branding. And so this one I do with Snagit, but anything kind of give a transparent background. Now I talked about, you know, I normalized the trips, and then we had the fare per trip, which are fairly even, but it is increasing year over year. And we have distance per trip, which is also increasing year over year. For the most part, it looks like we around here. So I think if I was going to build on this report, I would actually, this one wasn't as critical to like all the charts and analysis. Most of it is as percentages, kind of, you know, where to pick up, where to drop off, what days, what times. And then the week over week was critical. And so here I probably normalize this again, you know, maybe dividing the fare by the distance and kind of figuring out, you know, are they really increasing in price? Are we just going further? Try to get to the bottom of that, but I didn't actually get there. But that's where I would go if I actually spent more time on this one. And the other one is the week over week. And you can see there is some fluctuation, especially in this week. A lot of the weeks are it's all increasing every year or decreasing every year. There's a little bit of fluctuation in this one. And so I was thinking about this earlier. Right now I do a straight average, so they're all given even weight. But this may be one where possibly you could weight it, you know, 40, 30, 20, 10%, and then give more weight to more recent years than previous years. So that might be an idea if you kind of see it's definitely kind of changing over time. And that's kind of, a lot of times when I'm talking to people about creating Power BI reports, it's kind of understanding the data and the shape of the data. And that's what I mean by that, is kind of understanding how the data is moving over time and which one and how it would best be interpreted to kind of, especially for something where we're trying to predict or we're trying to say, you know, this is where we think, you know, future state's going to be. It's always kind of tricky. And so you can make those different kind of analysis decisions when kind of creating those measures. And the other thing I did is, of course, you can have this table. If you click on anything, it'll show down here, but I also have it as a hover. And so the top part of my tooltip will show kind of what is selected. I have only the 4 visuals, so I had the 4 of that. So and what's cool about this is if I click Wednesday here, and then I hover over here, it'll still say, hey, this is Wednesday at 5 p.m., any drop-off location or any pickup location. And it'll actually recalculate the estimated range. So this is 50 to 500 trips with an 81% change from last week. And kind of the same, the trip fare and the per distance don't really vary that much across the board. And you can kind of get a feel for, if you want to get into the nitty gritty, you know, looking at week over week. And what's cool about this is you can also see, one of the things I find challenging when you're working with weekly data is it's hard when you're working with multiple years to kind of get a sense of when in the year it is. So this one I do include for each year what the day is. And this is really important when you get a little further down the line and you get to New Year's. Let's see. I think it's 48. Here we go. And so you can kind of see these are the New Year weeks, and you'll see the numbers fluctuate heavily on the day because, you know, you can pretty much tell already December 31st is going to be the heaviest hitter. But of course, it's a changes day every year. So that's why I definitely wanted to include that context. So you kind of have that, I don't know what happened in 2020, but it's kind of all over the place. So it's hard to do it up here because weeks can cross into months, and I think about different ways, like do I just say it's mostly November, mostly December. If I had more time, I probably would have figured out some way to kind of indicate up here what month at least it was. But very clearly in the range, and then whenever you hover, it will show that date range again, but it will show a single day. And the DAX for that just says if the beginning and end of the range are the same, then just show one of them. So you don't say January 1st to January 1st. Another thing I did on the tooltip is because there's a lot of information on this tooltip. It's very kind of heavy. So what I wanted to do was to quickly, if you're having trouble reading the very small 15 0.89% here. I wanted to highlight that, and I have that in a little orange box so that you can see that number. That's the one that's shown. So I wanted to highlight that, and then everything else is kind of fluff around it.
Zoe, would you mind talking a little bit about that tooltip in case they've never seen a page tooltip like that, and that or the smart, and this looks like you maybe use that smart narrative too in there.
Yeah, I use smart narrative. Well, it's smart narrative is just a text box, and I use them everywhere to create values, and it's fantastic. I use them a lot. So the tooltip here is what I actually did is I copied in this table and added in the percentage over onto a new page, and I marked it in page information as a tooltip, which you can do right here. And I made it small. I made the tooltip size. This is a very small size. I think it's, wait, I think I customized this one. So I customized it. So they come in when you mark it as tooltip. It'll go as this tooltip size, which is itty bitty. Doesn't show a lot of information, but you can always just flip it to custom and make it whatever size you want. And this is just a text box, and you can see here these are measures, and you can review them. They look grayed out, but they're not. And so I have already created an estimated low, and it's just IntelliSense. So estimate with pandemic is the name, and then I can go ahead and format it however I like as well. I can save it with a name, review later, fair, distance. This one I didn't. I got bored. I got lazy at this one. So week over week change. And if I wanted to name it, I could just do week over week change. Save it. Now it's got a name. So it's very easy to do, and you can type around it. You can make things bold. Like one of the things about Power BI titles is you can't just bold selective text. You can't make it like a title and a subtitle. So a lot of times I have a blog up on my LinkedIn, I think about that, where, you know, I don't use I am using the Power BI title on most of this one, but in general, I actually don't. I take it off, and then I put a text box above it and kind of do whatever I want on the formatting side. And then up here, I have, this is just a multi-card that kind of shows a bunch of measures, which is just kind of which one's the selected value. And if there's no single selected value, then just say any. So that's why they say any here. And then to actually use it in the visual, you used to have to tie it to a measure, which meant it affected like a ton more things than you wanted it to, especially if you had multiple visuals on a page. It was a very kind of annoying way. Now you can actually just specify the tooltip. So here I went down, I say I want to use a report page, and I named my tooltip page tooltip because I'm super creative. And so here is my tooltip. Now if I wanted to, I could just turn it off. You know, maybe it's annoying me. And you can see the regular, put the tooltip page back on. So I can do kind of whichever one I want. You can still specify, where do I specify it? Here. Keep all filters on or off, just like you would previously as well. So that is still available. And you can do drill through and all that kind of goodness. I didn't do any drill through on this one, just single page. I'm trying to think what else. So this is the shape maps. The challenge actually came with the JSON shape map files for New York City, thank God, because I'm not so great at figuring out that shape map unless someone gives me a nice pretty JSON to go with it. I have tried like making a world map, and I never get it quite right, but you can just change the shape here, and you can see what it looks like. Maybe, possibly, maybe not. Oh, there it goes. And so this is really what that text file looks like. So if you can get a hold of a JSON map, you can do kind of any one you want. It comes with the US, Australia, a few other countries. Does not come with the world, which I find annoying. But there are a few out there if you look for it. And you can change the projection and stuff like that. So
is that just the .gojson format?
Correct.
Okay.
I believe so.
Not that it has to end with .geojson, that's just I guess that's neat that's really neat that you're able to use the shape map visual though.
Yeah, so it works out really nicely. And then this one, I colored everything the same, very high is purple, mid-range is orange, and then fading into the gray, black with low. So these ones actually, where you can see, actually do have numbers that are just very low. And then actually, I don't even show it if there's nothing there. It's just kind of a hole. You can see here, there's things here and there's nothing here, because apparently you don't ever drop off over there. You pick up, but you do not drop off in those areas. Not quite sure why. But yeah, so those, and then little icons, just little formatting things. I did do some coloring here on the text, just to kind of break it up with all the bars. So what was really interesting about doing the challenges is one of the things I find really interesting is even if you're given the same data, the same questions, people come up with very different analysis. And so that was the same. So that's the same every challenge I do. And I love it because I get to see, I'm already familiar with the data, I'm familiar with the analysis, I know what I was looking for it. And then kind of seeing how other people approach it is really cool. The runner-up was Ivan, and he did some pretty cool things on his version. I want to go over that real quick. A lot of people, I did the 2 bar charts for the days of the week and the time. A lot of people did a heat map. When I saw the heat map, I was like, I should have done a heat map. I was like, wait, I mistake. I want to go back and do over. And then he did this really cool one with small multiples. And I think this is fantastic. Like, it shows it really well because it is continuous. And he got a lot of props. And I think it's going to run up because of this. And it like shows, he did the trend line really well. I didn't do the trend line. It really wasn't asked for. But once I saw his trend line, I was like, I wish I'd done a trend line. But it was pretty cool. You can see different things there. But this is really cool. And I was wondering, like, well, why didn't he make it just one straight line like he did the years? And then I realized that the small multiples cap out at 6, not 7. So you can't actually put 7 in a row. So that's like infuriating when you're looking at a week of data. So he had to come up with some solution to that problem. And so he just did 4 and 3 and then kind of had this kind of blip out with the map. But I thought it was really well done. But again, it's very different to my report. Answering the exact same questions, exact same data, a whole 9 yard, and very, very different look. Which I thought was great. So I actually went through, so after I saw the heat maps, I was like, I should have done a heat map. So I actually did a heat map, of course. But what I really want to do with the heat map is have the totals, on the top and side, which Power BI does not have a visual that does this natively. This is 3 visuals all kind of squished in, and of course, the days of the week are off, so I'd have to. So these are, Wednesday's a bit wider, so it doesn't fully line up. So it drove me a little crazy after a minute. But in general, you can kind of get it. The problem I had with this approach, I liked how, it was very clear. It kind of showed you a lot more detail, showed them combined. And of course, you still have that tooltip if I turned it on, which I don't have it turned on. You still have those tooltips. But anytime you click on anything, and I like very interactive reports, it kind of broke away from the formatting that I wanted it really to kind of stay still and gray out the other areas, which it didn't do really well. So then I thought about Ivan's report, and I thought, well, I like the small multiples, and I do realize that while you can't put 7 across and have it scroll, it'll just go to the next row. If you do them the other way, it will scroll and show 7 on top of each other. So I did that as well, totally knocking off his report. I thought that was fantastic, and that's how we get ideas. What I like about this, I think this one actually does a better job than the heat map in kind of really showing those different trends by day. You can really see the days of the week having this, especially with building up to Friday, mornings are not so good. whereas you see the mornings really kick in on the weekends. And then it's kind of even keel throughout the day, which I didn't, obviously it shows in the heat map very clearly, but I didn't actually get that takeaway from the heat map. All I was focusing on was this kind of purple section. I wasn't really figuring out. So this is kind of a weird shape, looks kind of scary, maybe like a one-eyed pumpkin or something. But I think this one does a better job of kind of showing those kind of weekly versus weekend trends, which I thought was interesting. And again, it still have that total up top, and it kind of lines up. It doesn't line up perfectly, but I think it lines up a bit better than the heat map with the side ones. So it's always something to learn and something to change and kind of look at others and see how they did it. So I thought that was really cool. What else did I want to show on this? I think that was it on that one. So we go back to here. Again, this one really gives no indication of that, possible variance during the week. Like having two charts was kind of good, kind of a weekly analysis. But when you're looking at kind of the nitty-gritty day, you had to kind of really click in to each single one. So go into Saturday, and then you can see again that spike, and maybe Friday. You can kind of think, but they're not. One other thing that kind of loses in it doing it this way is the axes are not held. So this will just rescale, right? So the highest here is 1%, 1.16, 95. This is maybe a bad week. I want a different week. There we go. So here's a good one. So you can see this one is 7, and then this one is 1. So you don't kind of get that feel for by clicking through. Whereas here, because in the small multiple, the axes are held constant on all of the line charts, you can definitely see that build up on Friday. And you can definitely see, Tuesday has that really low number for the morning. So another thing with this data, it was really difficult to kind of get a feel for, 25 million rows. In Power Query, you can go ahead and bring in the whole data set and kind of look at it with all those fancy top features, but it's slow, so very slow. But you can actually bring in a table profile as a separate table into the model. I did this morning. It took about an hour to populate. It was very, very slow. But now I can see, it didn't do all of the fields, but I can see the, almost 26 million rows, how many distinct, there's 262, 263 locations. And you can see kind of the minimums and the maximums. Like, I didn't realize, like, there's a fair that's like 10,000. So, if I'd seen that before I did the report, I probably would have investigated that a little further, seen what happened there. I'm not quite sure how we have a 10,000 fair. I know the negatives will get accounted for in my multiplier, so I wasn't concerned about that. And you get to see the averages. So now I'm concerned, like now I see this and I'm like, ooh, I think I missed something in my analysis. And then kind of standard deviation and all that kind of stuff. And this comes if you use the Power Query profile.table, and then just any table that's loaded into Power Query, you can do this too. And then what's cool about it is you can bring it in, you can see the null values. I use this a lot when I'm working with data just to kind of get a feel for it and kind of see what's going on. Make sure there's no weird values. But I think that's all I have on this one. So we can open the floor to questions. Or anything I didn't go over.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still somewhat newer to the Power BI space. I've been a member for a few years, but I've done a lot of SSRS and crystal reports over the years. And it's not uncommon for customers to come up with their requirements along the way. Is that still a common problem with Power BI?
Yeah. I mean, requirements are always very kind of fluid. Especially coming from clients who've used SSRS reports, or like paginated reports. They expect a lot out of tables in Power BI, and Power BI doesn't particularly do tables like of lots and lots of data very well. It slows it all down. Power BI likes to aggregate. Now, if you do go with a smaller client, pre and per user is a pretty affordable option. And then you have that paginated report, and you can use those SSRS reports. What's cool is there's a new feature where you can actually embed them in the Power BI. So you can create the paginated report and have it stand alone in the workspace, and they can see it just like they would before. You can subscribe to it, have it auto email, all that goodness. And you can even have have a table that's paginated report in as a visual. So that's what this one here is. This is that paginated report, SSRS report. You can bring that in here, have it as the table, and have all that, very fine abilities to kind of really format and group and aggregate however you please, and then have it with, say, Power BI visuals. But yeah, as soon as clients see something, they love to, having it's a problem, but not a problem, because Power BI makes it quite easy to change it. Like changing SRS and paginated reports is you have to really go in and change each detail. I'm not very good at it, but I can do them. But I find it very overwhelming sometimes, just how difficult it is to change a little thing, but then you get a lot of freedom on what you can change. With Power BI, it's pretty easy to make changes and modify things. Sometimes it gets in the nitty-gritty and you're like, well, actually Power BI doesn't do that, or and then you get into those type of conversations. But for the most part, Power BI is pretty easy to edit.
Yeah, Brandon, that's a great question. Oh, go ahead.
You were mentioning, Zoe, that you can make SSRS reports in Power BI now. That's something I've heard of. Something I'm more uninformed on is, can you import SSRS reports that were built, in an SSRS system into Power BI very easily, or is that still a complicated thing to do, possibly from scratch even?
I haven't actually done it, but the report builder that I use is the same report builder kind of basically you use in SQL. I haven't exactly done it, but I feel like you can just put them just as straight as they are up into the Power BI tenant or the Power BI service, and use them just like you would have thought. It's really the only difference is you're sourcing from SQL directly instead of sourcing from a Power BI data set. That's really the only difference. Power BI data sets are like a little database in themselves, and you can query them with DAX, you can query them MDX, and that's how you basically make a table, and then you create your paginated report just like you would if you did it off SQL directly. And you can do it off SQL directly. So don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure you can just literally just put them up in the workspace, and then you can just access them and put them in a report directly. I don't think it requires a rebuild, but don't quote me on that. I actually haven't done it.
Yeah,
I appreciate you sharing your experience.
Yeah, and so I think that you touched on it, Zoe, but the paginated report visual, I'm not quite sure how that works either, but I believe that the idea behind that was that, to the point that or the question that Brandon asked, can I just import something that I've already got out there? I think that that's kind of the idea behind that paginated reports visual. I could be wrong there because I haven't used it either, but
let's see if I can quickly do one. It's usually not too difficult. So if you do, this is, by the way, really quickly how you can cheat and grab some DAX without writing any DAX. Oh, I don't have it installed. Thought I had it on there. So you can just go and install it, and then you just okay, open it up. See if I can. So just so you know, I'm really kind of terrible at paginated reports. So I'm going to create a data set. I'm going to go ahead and, oh, this doesn't work. So there, so you can go ahead and just, you know, connect to any database you want. I'm going to cancel the wizard. So data sources, so you can add that Power BI, but it can be anything you like. It's going to make me authenticate. Nope. Cool. And so now you can see, now I've got to remember where I put this. As you can see, my organization skills when it comes to these guys are not the best. Did I put in Galaxy? I had to put it in. Let's see if my search works. There it is, V2. Okay, so I'm pulling it off of one of my pre and per user spaces, and then I can add a data set, pick that source, and just paste in whatever I did there. So now I've added in my table, and it's kind of ugly, so I can insert matrix. Let's see, name, expression, count. Sure. Okay. And you run it. Looks terrible. Let's go ahead and publish it. Okay. I think that was in demo. Okay. Now let's go ahead and try and bring it in. There's my paginated. Doesn't have any parameters. See the report. And there you go. So now you can see the paginated report just as I built it in Power BI, and I can add in additional stuff. So that kind of, you know, gives you the best of both worlds when it comes especially to tables.
And you were saying earlier you feel that it's a lot easier to change little things here or there with the report than it was with SSRS previously?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not very good at SRS, to be honest, but you know, I definitely find, you know, Power BI, you come in, and what's cool about Power BI too is you give the user the ability, and you can have that kind of drill through, drill up. You're not limited to one table like you are in SSRS report. You can have the full details. You can have those automatic aggregations like Brent was saying earlier. You know, and I've seen that where, you know, maybe we have 150 million rows of daily data, but when you aggregate it up to, so you have that direct query, and then you have like a monthly table that is import, a lot smaller, and so it's very fast, and then when you drill through it, it takes a little bit longer. And especially in Power BI, you can do stuff like in Paginate that you can't do, such as personalized visuals. So here's that. I can turn it on. And the way that works is, I'll have to actually go. It doesn't work when you're publishing to web for the internet to see, but if you do it, oops. Your own tenant, nope. Then your users can actually go ahead and, let's see, demo. customize anything that's in. So say they're trying to build a PowerPoint, they're going to go meet with so-and-so, and the so-and-so really wants to see this in a pie chart. They can, on the fly, do it directly. Maybe they want to see it this way. Maybe they want to see it in a bar chart. Maybe they just want to see it as a table. So they can go ahead and modify your report. And if you have custom visuals embedded into Power BI, they're also accessible as long as they were in the report to start with. And so you can see this stuff in different ways and then save it. You can change things out. Like maybe I wanted to see, maybe I did want to see the straight number. So let's see my trips. Instead, I can actually put that in there. Now I want to maybe I want to make a combo chart with this. I'm going to put that percentage on the line values, maybe.
So the power of this is that it allows the end user to start making modifications for just themselves and
exactly,
and not affect what everyone else is going to see.
Yep. So they can do that. Done. Maybe they want to blow it up. Maybe they want to change. Now you can't change colors. You can't do that. I mean, Power BI has some ways of kind of overriding your color theme. They used to. Where'd it go?
You might have to go to edit.
No, I don't think it's edit. You can edit it as well. I tried to, but there is actually a way to view it. Here it is, high contrast. So now you can go ahead and totally ignore my color scheme, which was beautiful. So you shouldn't do that. But this is helpful for, oh, my little ghost looks so cool in this version. Anyway, so you can kind of see those different ways and then save as a bookmark and come back later. Filter it however you want, whichever way is preferable to you. And then when you're done, you can just reset back to the original. So apparently that doesn't actually reset it. None.
Does Power BI tend to, you said that the user gets essentially their own version of the report. Can they always look back at some of the different versions that they made of it, or does it just kind of keep, this is the basic and this is what you're using currently?
Yeah, so there's a number of levels to self-service in Power BI. So you can literally just connect to my data set in Power BI desktop and create your own visuals. You can do the personalized visuals where it's just really in the browser. It's you can bookmark it, but it's really transient. It doesn't impact anything. You can also allow your users to save a copy of the whole thing and put it in a different workspace, put it in their own workspace. And then they can edit it in the browser, just like you would in desktop, or they can download PBX. So there's a lot of different ways. And then if they make a copy of it in their own workspace, then they can edit it in the browser, which I don't recommend for widely shared reports because I have a whole spiel about keeping your PBX files in source control and making sure they're sacred because other people can accidentally delete them if they're in the workspace. You don't have historical versions. But once I put it in there, they have a copy of it. It's going to connect automatically back to the same data set. So as soon as yours refreshes, theirs will refresh. And they can do whatever they want at that point. They can change the color theme. They can make their own measures on top of it. They can delete everything, just create their own simple report that they want. And so it's a really cool way for them, they don't have to go back to you every single time they want to make some small itty bitty change. It gives them the ability to do it themselves, which I think is really cool. Sometimes overwhelmingly self-service.
One of those options that you mentioned, Zoe, were bookmarks, and I find that those are really helpful for users. There's normally just kind of a handful of different ways that they want to see the data, that they want to see this visual. And so teaching your users about how to create bookmarks so that they can quickly get back to a view that's meaningful to them, maybe, just them, not everybody else that's going to be looking at this report. That's a really effective way of of doing that.
And honestly, sometimes it's for my own benefit. Someone comes and asks. A lot of times, I'll make a report, but they're like, "Oh, Zoe, but I need to see this. Could you filter it this way? Could you do it this way?" I'm like, "Yes, I can do that." And then honestly, the report's for me to create a thing for them, so that helps too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally self-serving.
One of the things that I love about that is that you can create your bookmark and then make that your favorite, so that anytime the user goes back to that report, they're going to see that view of it.
Yep. Any other questions? That was a good question, though.
Yeah, Brandon, I think that we all feel your pain on the scope creep related to report dev.
That's what I like about the challenge reports is there's a lack of, it's just whatever I want to do.
There you go. Yeah.
That's great. Any other questions?
So I have a question about being able to notify users that you've made updates. I've kind of explored subscriptions, but it looks like that's something that's just kind of on a set cadence, and you can't set it to where you notify them for specific things. And then I've been looking at endorsements as well, and I endorsed a report and sent it to myself, and then nothing came. And I don't know if it's because like it's a loop, right? Like you're the one endorsing it and sending it to yourself, and maybe it's just like I can't do this. But what strategies are there for notifying users of, for instance, production releases?
So for me, for real quick, so the endorsements, so you can endorse a data set, and what that's really cool about is if you go to get at the data set through, say, Excel, or if you open up Power BI Desktop and you're looking at all the data sets you have access to, all the endorsed ones will be at the top of that list. So they're very visible. But as for a lot of times what I like to do when I'm creating a report is I'll create kind of a Teams. I'm usually working with Microsoft Shop. You can do it in, other ones as well. You can do it in Slack, whatever, where there is a set channel, and in that team channel, you can, put the Power BI directly embedded into that channel. You can keep the files for the PBX and the source, in the files section, so you kind of have them separate from the workspace, backed up. You can turn version control on SharePoint, that kind of stuff. But that's where you can put maybe so a lot of times for a workspace, or when you publish it to the workspace is just for the people who are using the report, building the report, and then you publish it as an app to, say, a security group. That can be that Teams kind of space that I've created, and then inside there I can say, hey, at everybody in this channel, I created a new version. Please go check it out. And it's a really good way for them to have one place to go to kind of see that kind of log. It's not, you can always email them out, but email is going to get lost forever in their inbox. Whereas having that kind of in a Teams channel, sorry, my cat is like seriously right by my camera and playing with the window. Thanks, cat. And then that way has worked out really well for me. It kind of gives them, a way to kind of see that. But honestly, just reaching out and saying, hey, I made a report change. Please go check it out is always effective.
Okay, thank you. I'm thinking more like, so I have an app and I'm, iterating through my development, and then the app is connected to production, and then I'm wanting to like advise like executive leadership, like, hey, this is what we, these are the results of the last sprint. Now you have a new dashboard and this is the functionality. And I was hoping that there would be a way to notify them through Power BI directly, as opposed to Teams or sending an email. Or
you can also add comments, and that will kind of notify them as well. Let me show you what that looks like. I'm not sure if you've used that before, But you can come here and I can say, you know, let's see. So if I click on here, you can even comment. Let's see, how do I spotlight you? Spotlight, there, like this. And then I can, used to be able to comment just off of here, add comment. So then I can say here, got it, and I could say, it's kind of same as kind of Teams. I can add myself, yeah, I can add myself, cool. Look at these new numbers. And then you can, of course, subscribe, but you're right, it's on a set cadence. Now, if you're only refreshing the report whenever you make a change, like it's not refreshing daily all by itself, you can set it to anytime as data changes, it'll kind of send out that subscription with a screenshot and a link to the report and all that kind of stuff. And you can do it manually too, one-off. You know, you can save a subscription, then just kind of edit it, do whatever, and then just send it, and then undo your edits. So you can do it that way as well. What's cool about this functionality is it's actually, it's very difficult to share a personal bookmark in Power BI. So you have something, you know, filtered in a certain way, but this method actually includes a bookmark. So I can go back. So let's get out of here, click out here. So I'm going to click to this guy, see if it works. And then if I click this, it's going to go back to whatever I had filtered on and have that personal bookmark that I can share with somebody else. Now this is, you can't do that with the kind of regular bookmarks, the personal bookmarks. This is the only way to kind of share a bookmark. And I like this a lot because you can go exactly how you filtered it and share it with somebody else. So that's an idea.
Thank you.
So this isn't something that I've done, but I might just throw it out there. Power BI is part of the Power Platform. And so Power Platform is Power Automate and Power Apps. You, I think, may be able to set up a Power Automate flow that would notify some individuals whenever you publish a new version of your report out there. So that might be something else to look at.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will explore that. I set up an automated workflow to add users to an AD group, but the thought never occurred to me to see if I could do it on the report. So thank you very much for that suggestion. I'm going to explore that.
Sure.
One other thought on that too, Taguma, and thanks for that question, was they have an API now. There's some like deployment pipelines are getting some APIs, and I don't know if those APIs can notify you with webhook styles. I doubt it, but I could see having some process outside of Power BI, not built in, definitely outside, that did that flow and like, okay, I trigger the deployment pipeline to push it to the right workspace, and I guess publish the app if we're using apps to distribute, and then then send that notification. But it's, again, that's going to be outside of Power BI, like Teams or something. So, but just thinking about that deployment pipeline API, there's lots of different, that's one way to maybe hook into that.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
But I think that's all I have. So
Okay.
I think we're getting close to time anyway. So.
Yeah, this has been fantastic. Thank you very much, Zoe. Obviously, great presentation, and thank you. You can learn a lot by watching and looking at other people's reports, code, the way they solve the problem. It is enlightening, and I also really appreciate that. I need to share here, but appreciate that you pulled up other people's submissions too, to kind of show like what you liked about theirs. And like you said, it's interesting how same data, you can arrive in two very different visualizations. Hopefully they'll tell a very similar story, but it's neat to compare what makes a better story. So clearly doing these competitions really sharpens your skills. So I know you put a lot of time into that, and thanks for sharing it with us. Just very quickly before we wrap up, I'll talk about our 2022 plans, but I would mention nothing is like, okay, totally set in stone yet, but Tisha, I know you might even be online here. We bumped into each other in Tulsa actually, and she mentioned that Bank of Oklahoma has a really neat technology center that would be great to host a group. Of course, pandemic is always going to sort of make sort of conditions on, or contingencies on our plans, but I think ideally I'd like to get back to in-person meetings as much as possible with some online options in 2022. Frankly, those are kind of the hardest meetings to host and do a good job at because it's hard to be really good for the people who are there and good for the people online. But we'll do our best. And anyway, that would be in Tulsa. And I was going to mention that DeLisi also reached out. They have a whole new facility here in Oklahoma City and mentioned we've got all these great conference rooms. They reached out like last summer, and so we talked about March, just way off in the future. But depending on what happens with our Tulsa meeting, anyway, next one will probably be in Oklahoma City. Yeah, hybrid likely. That's the main thing. Yeah, and so some of you have. It's been great. I like Donovan Fox. Donovan, you were messaging me and talking about presenting, even coming over from Arkansas, which is fantastic. So I definitely want to keep this good online community that it's really kind of grown over 2020 and 2021, and but also good to see you all in person sometimes too. So neat that you all were here, and really this is a very valuable group for me, and I appreciate everybody here. So since it's Thanksgiving, I'll say I'm thankful for all of you. Oh, glad I put this bullet point because I was just about to skip over it. Major Dan Stewart reached out about a job opportunity at the Oklahoma City Police Department. Sometimes we do get things like this. So I'm going to post it here in Meetup, and also post it in like our community site. But you could apply at this website here. Here, I'll put it in the Teams chat again. And the deadline to apply was December 7th. So if you're interested in a job in law, kind of the law enforcement area and public service, then this might be a really, really neat one to work with the police department. And his contact info will be in those messages. Okay, great. And sometimes I do hear about different job opportunities. So anytime you're kind of, exploring, feel free to reach out or ask the group about what they know. So I think that's the main thing. And since we're close on time, we were going to have maybe some Q&A time, but I'm so glad that we asked questions during the presentation, and you guys did a great job with that. Thank you. I saw some questions. Will it be posted? Yes, Naeem. I'm going to post it on our community site. I know not everybody may have access to that yet, but I'm trying to get more and more people in there. Speaking of the sites, basically we have our community in like 3 places: community.powerbi.com, meetup.com, and there's kind of this legacy site that was hosted by Dynamic Communities. That is still working. They told us they were going to shut it down. It's still up. So basically I just post it everywhere. So we're going to post meetings and try to post stuff everywhere except for Messenger, Pigeon, to get the word out as much as possible. Don't want anybody to miss an event just because, oh, I didn't hear about it. And I've been guilty of not, doing that before. So
these normally go on our group YouTube channel as well. Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Yes, they
Awesome.
do. We have a YouTube channel. Yeah, we are omni-channel group. Okay, great. Well, have a wonderful holiday time, and I look forward to seeing some of you in person. Probably either late January or February is where we're leaning right now for our Tulsa meeting next year in 2022. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Yep.